On today's Join Us in France, the most exciting food markets you can visit on your next visit to Paris. This is Join Us in France, episode 108. And today we take a fairly deep dive into the world of Paris food markets with my guest, Emily Dilling, who is a podcaster and also the author of a very nice cookbook that we'll talk all about in just a moment. But before we get to that, I would like to thank listeners who have taken the time to review the show recently in iTunes. The first one I want to tell you about is a 5-star review from Farmer Phil, who says that Join Us in France is his favorite podcast. I love that. He says, living in the US and wanting to travel to France more often than I can, I live vicariously through these podcasts. Annie, who is French. Oh, I love what he says. He says, I'm smart, fun, funny, and engaging. Well, thank you. And hosts every podcast, including trip reports from other listeners. Elise, who is an American living in France, is a virtual encyclopedia of knowledge about the country. And she sure is. Its history and all the details of places in France. Elise is on most episodes that are not trip reports. I also appreciate the more general podcasts about France, covering French culture, food, logistics. Together, Annie and Elise keep a rolling commentary going that almost makes me want that my commute was longer so I could finish each episode. Yeah, we do go on a long time, don't we? I usually visit Normandy every 2 years, so obviously you're well informed about France, but I enjoy listening about other places in France, hearing about their history, traveling in my mind when I can't get there in person. These podcasts keep me connected and intrigued for my future travels. Thanks, Annie and Elise, for keeping it interesting, fun, and intriguing. I look forward to each new episode. Well, thank you, Farmer Phil. Another one is and also a 5-star review from GR Corn 73. Says, my husband and I have enjoyed several of these podcasts together, and I listen to several a week myself. I'm so excited to visit France for the first time, and this will be our second trip away from our 3 young children in our 10 years of marriage. Ooh, that's always difficult, isn't it? But it can be done. Paris seems to offer many things we love: museums, culture, diversity, creative meals, chocolate, me too, and history. I love listening to you ladies share your thoughts and insights. It has definitely helped me become more excited and prepared. Merci. Merci to you to have taken the time to write us a review. It really helps. One last one. Great storytelling, also 5-star review by LJA21. Says, I am preparing for a trip to France this year. I have found this podcast to be so inspiring. I have devoured many episodes in just a short week. Oh, you're going to get a headache. Don't do that. I am eager to listen to them all. All right. Thank you, listeners. There's many more, but I wanted to touch on that and encourage you to take the time to write us an iTunes review or wherever you listen to the show, because it helps other people find us as well. This episode was helpful to you? Share it with your friends on social media. Hello, Emily. Welcome to Join Us in France.
Hi, Annie. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's lovely to have you. So I have introduced you a little bit to the listenership already, but I'd like you to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, that sort of basic stuff.
Sure. Okay. So I'm originally from California. I lived in California after I went to university in the Northwest in Washington State. So I studied there. And then in 2005, I made my way to France, kind of on a whim, actually. I had studied abroad. I had been an English assistant in sort of a rural part of the country.
Oh, yes.
I was in Mayenne, so it's kind of in the sort of Loire, Brittany sort of triangle there. Yeah. And when I came back to the US after that experience, I was really missing France. So I just kind of bought a ticket to Paris
Cool.
And told myself I would stay as long as I could. And that was a little over 10 years ago now.
Yes.
So so 10 years in Paris. And then I've been for the last 6 months living in the Loire-et-Cher, which is in the Loire Valley area.
Yes.
Which is really beautiful. So I'm settling in here now.
It's very rural.
It's very rural.
Yeah.
There's probably more grapevines than there are people who live here, but that doesn't bother me. It's beautiful.
That's all right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so while I was in Paris, I started the blog Paris Paysanne, which I still maintain now, but I'm kind of writing a little bit more about my country life now since I have less city life.
Right. We have to say that Paris Paysanne means, how would you translate that in English?
Yeah, I think literally it would be Paris peasant, but I feel like in English, peasant sort of has a pejorative sense to it, whereas actually I had an interesting conversation with a winemaker yesterday about how he sees his job, and when we were kind of talking about, is he an artist? Is he an artisan? Is he a paysan? And I think the idea of paysan is sort of, in French at least, for me, someone who lives off the land, works the land, and doesn't expect to be, to take more from the land than they need or that they can use to share with people. I think it's an idea of just having this connection with the land and the origins of, how we nourish ourselves.
Fair.
So the idea of that was sort of like combining Paris and this sort of paysan mentality where we can, go to the market and buy vegetables that, still have dirt on them and came from the earth and were farmed by a person, and we can have a contact with that person, just sort of having some sort of connection to the countryside and to,
right,
dirt, even in a city.
So a more traditional way of life, which still happens in France every day. I mean, there are people who live like that every day. So.
For sure. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
But I wondered, because paysanne is also this idea that French queens had at times, that they wanted to go back. There's always been that desire to go back to the land and to go back to the essential things in life,
For sure. Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's an interesting title. Anyway, yeah. So you worked on your blog a lot, and then now you work on books more.
Yeah, well, yeah. So it was really nice actually. The book, my Paris Market Cookbook, really feels like kind of like a family album or sort of like a yearbook. It was something that has a focus and is really rooted in the blog and the idea behind the blog, which is exploring Paris markets, finding farmers at those markets. Mm-hmm. But then it was really fortuitous because I started the blog in 2010, started kind of building this map of different Paris markets and where you can find farmers and things like that. And then around 2012, this sort of boom in craft and artisanal products happened. The craft coffee scene started kind of exploding. The craft beer scene in Paris really blew up, started to get a lot of momentum. And so those things really fell under that umbrella of, buying directly from the producer. So I started exploring those areas and just meeting a lot of wonderful, passionate people who were eager to share their knowledge on these topics. Right. And so that's in the book as well. And I feel like it's kind of tells the story of all of these people that I met while doing research for the blog. And it came out at a really great time, right when I was preparing my move from Paris. And it feels like, for me, it's really personal. It feels kind of just like a collection of people that I love very much. But I think also it expands a lot of topics that I think would be of interest to anyone who's coming to Paris and wants to discover it. Yeah. Sure.
Markets are fascinating. Just a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that one of the things that's saddest about Paris is how they destroyed Les Halles, the buildings, they're gone. And some of them were just so gorgeous. They should have preserved at least some of them.
I agree. Now it's an eyesore. I think they're renovating too. And I think it's going to be even more eyesore-ish. But I think, it's a shame. We separate that connection with the producer. We take it out of the city. And I think it's important to be able to have that connection and have that contact and be able to talk to the person who grows your food. And I think markets are a great way to do that.
But to be honest with you, I have to interject that it's really hard to be a producer and a marketer at the same time.
For sure.
I mean, it's not everybody who can do both of those things.
It's a real strain. It really
limits you, Mm-hmm. So what's happening in my neck of the woods, and I'm near Toulouse, is that groups of producers get together and they rent a space and they do kind of a collection of producers that have this store. And it's a covered market, if you wish, but it's just one big store. And they have people they hire people to sell the stuff. So sometimes the producers are there, sometimes they're not. It's really hard to juggle, to do it all and make a living.
I think we really have to give thanks to the farmers who do make a point of coming to the market. And I think, there's a lot of issues with farmers markets and their logistics. I think it's also hard for people to go, people who have jobs and they work during the day to go to the market. So it is interesting to see the way that people have kind of innovated and created different market models. Like the one you just described sounds amazing. There's things like AMAPs. There's also La Ruche qui dit oui.
Hang on. You're going too fast. What's AMAP?
AMAP is I don't know what it stands for in French. In the US, we call it a CSA, like Community Supported Agriculture.
Oh, okay.
So I think, we have to look that up.
You buy a share of produce and they deliver each week or...
Exactly. So, and you sign up for a yearly subscription and you basically get whatever the farmer has to give you that week, and you meet at a collection point and he or she comes to that point in the city or town.
I don't know anybody anymore who does that in France. I used to. A few years ago, people were trying that.
Oh, yeah, we have our local farmer who does that. Okay. Our local farmer also, drops off panier de légumes, like little baskets of vegetables. So he brings that to us on Tuesdays. So we have weekly deliveries, and that's kind of nice too, because he knows how much, it's a set price, and he knows that Tuesday is delivery day and the rest of the time he's on his farm. So, I think it takes figuring out those logistics.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm so impressed. I know when I was living in Paris, I was in the 18th in Barbès, and we had a marché Ornano that was 3 days a week, and Jean-Michel was the farmer, and he was there 3 days a week. And he was in Ile-de-France, so he was about 40 miles from Paris, but I'm sure he got up at 5 a.m. every morning to beat the traffic to get into Paris, and then he probably didn't get back until 3:00 in the afternoon. That's all day for a farmer. So I was so grateful that he did that.
Anyway, there are logistical problems, which is why probably it doesn't happen more often. But there are places where they pull it off.
For sure,
it's true, and usually it's family based. There's a regular Saturday morning market near me, and there's this one family, and you can tell they're all family because they all look the same, and they take turns, so sometimes it's one of them, sometimes the other, and they have the least appealing looking displays.
Okay.
Because they're not marketers. They just bring their cajot. Cajot is a kind of a plastic crate full of vegetables, and you plop them on. And, it's like, you want to buy it or not? There's no
rustic
frills here. It's really, and I kind of like that, because I understand they don't, they're growing the things. They can't make it pretty too. That's a different job.
That's what I actually tell people when they're looking, like those kind of visual clues when you're at a market, is to look for the dirty produce and look for kind of beat up wooden crates and things that, aren't wrapped in plastic and, aren't maybe presented in the most aesthetic way. But that's, those are signs of locally grown goods, I think.
So now let's get to the actual food markets in Paris that we decided to concentrate on, because they are lovely. And since I live in Toulouse, I don't know them. So I want you to tell me about them.
Sure. Which one do you want to start with?
Well, the first one on the list was Marché des Batignolles. And the 8th.
So that's kind of borderline 8th and 17th. Actually, so there's 3 all organic markets in Paris. There's one in the 15th that's teeny tiny and it doesn't have any producers, but there's one in Raspail and one in Batignolles. And Batignolles is Saturday and Raspail is Sunday. And they actually both have a lot of the same vendors. They both have a nice selection of farmers. Everything is organic. And they're really fun markets. Since they're on the weekends, you have a lot of, couples who are there making a day out of it, families, people who have lived in the neighborhood forever. It's a nice mixture, and it's a really nice reflection of the community. They can be super crowded because a lot of people go there specifically because there's such a huge selection of all organic food.
Yeah.
That's where I used to buy all of my eggs. There's a little, really sweet couple. They only sell eggs. They're all farm fresh. And you can tell that they love their chickens, and they have a lovely story. And they're happy chickens. And there's a woman called Hermione who sells all these beautiful, like young pousses, in English, I'm not sure, like kind of like baby leaves and different lovely, like mustard greens and sorrel and things like that. She also sells little potted plants, so you can kind of have a balcony garden or bring those home with you. Yeah. She does wheatgrass juice, things like that. There's a guy who does a lovely potato pancake, so that's like a perfect market snack to munch on while you're walking around. There's a great cheese shop. There's a really great fishmonger. It has everything you need. And that
There's
was
probably
kind of
dozens of different stands, right?
Yeah, it's pretty huge. Batignolles is, I think, bigger than Raspail. Raspail is a little bit more cramped. So if you're kind of agoraphobic, I would suggest Batignolles over Raspail.
Okay.
But it's a lovely place to see people running into each other. That was kind of my weekend date would be, going there, seeing which friends were there, getting a coffee at Le Belle Café afterwards, and just, making a day of it. And it's nice, I think, kind of...
Le Belle Café.
Le Belle is in the 18th, and it's near Place de Clichy. And it's Anna Traddles and Alice Quillet who started that. And they used to work at Rose Bakery, and then they started Le Belle Café. And it's lovely. You can get good coffee. They do a great brunch. It's a good lunch spot as well. They make beautiful food that's kind of French and British inspired because the women are British, and they make a nice little fusion of both cultures. And I think, it's nice. That's the markets kind of get you out. They get you in the community. They make food shopping an experience instead of a chore, I think.
It's true. That's a very good point. It's because you get the full experience. So you can
have a chat. You can ask for a recipe, and the ladies in the line or the farmer will give you ideas of how to prepare something. You could go not knowing what you're going to buy, and then come home with ingredients and a recipe, and you're set. So
very, very, very true.
You won't get that at Carrefour or Monoprix or any of the big supermarkets.
Probably not. Although if you're me, you talk to everybody. So anyway, so that was Batignolles, and you mentioned Raspail as well. So this one is also a organic.
Yes. And again, there's a lot of similar vendors. A lot of the vendors who are at Raspail and Batignolles, they're the same. Raspail has also one vendor who's not at Batignolles, and that is a woman called Valerie, and she has Au Régal muffins, and they make English muffins, which are super hard to find in Paris, and also other more traditional French baked goods. And they're lovely, and you can go and get a little coffee and have a chat with her. She's a total sweetheart. And the English muffins are really great. I used to buy them to make Eggs Benedict with.
So you're talking to all these people. Do you speak fluent French, or are these people that speak English?
I speak French, so I have spoken French with them. Valerie is married to to an American, and she's bilingual. I think a lot of people at the market can do English, especially since these two markets are pretty touristy.
Hipster, because around where I am, don't try English at the market.
I know. It's a huge change too. I'm in the countryside now, and not a lot of people speak English. No. But in Paris, I think at those two markets you could get by.
That's great.
Yeah. And plus it's all visual. You can really, use gestures and points and have an interaction. It's just a nice vibe. Like, people are there to be in contact. I think that's, another reason probably why farmers do make the effort to come into town to be at markets. It's also nice to see who you're selling to and who the community is and what they want and what they're looking for.
And you've clearly established a relationship with these people, you know, so it takes time. I mean, you go back week after week, but the people who listen to the show will probably just go visit one time. You know, they'll probably pick one of these markets and go and spend an hour or two. And they probably don't even have a kitchen. Well, maybe they've rented an apartment.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do that. That's my favorite feedback to get on the book is, you know, I got the book, I took it to Paris, we went to the markets, we bought some things, and then we made the recipes in the apartment we rented. Like that's great. For me, that's just perfect. Like I want the book to be a guide and a cookbook and something that you can, you know, helps you make memories and helps you, you know, maybe also see the city in a different way. I think a lot of times, you know, you do the Paris trip and you do, there's so much to do. You do museums, you go shopping, you visit sites, you have picnics, and, you know, you try to be outside, you're walking along the Seine, all of those things. And it's great to see postcard Paris, but I think, you know, getting your hands dirty, smelling a tomato and bringing it home and making a salad or bringing that on your picnic is a nice way to kind of interact with the city.
Oh, sure. Very, very true. Okay, so let's move on to Marché Ornano. I know nothing about this one.
Okay, yeah, not a lot of people do, and it's also probably because it's in an area that's quickly changing, but is kind of off the beaten track, or maybe not a place that I would have sent tourists to 10 years ago. But it's on Boulevard Ornano, which crosses Boulevard Barbès, which I think a lot of people might recognize the name at least. It was one of those no-go zones that was a part of that scandal a few years back when Fox News, you know, really exaggerated the state of affairs.
You know,
yeah. So I think it's in a do-go zone. I think it's a really exciting part of town. It's where Paris had its first ever brewery within the city. That's Brasserie de la Goutte d'Or is there. There's a great coffee shop called Café Lomi that's in that neighborhood. There's a great little craft beer bar that only has French artisanal beers called the Super Coin. That's right in there too. And then 3 days a week, if I remember correctly, it's Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday. To verify that, there's Marché Ornano. And there's
Tuesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. Yes,
Tuesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. So yeah, it's great also because a lot of markets are only 2 days a week, and this one's 3. And you'll find, you know, you can find a lot of sort of imported food if you're looking for ingredients to make a Portuguese meal or African meal or kind of North African meal. You find a lot of ingredients there. A lot of shops where you can find really interesting herbs and spices. You know, roast chicken, all kinds of things. And you'll also find Jean-Michel Dilling, who's the farmer there. And he, like I said, he's an Ile-de-France farmer, so he's within the Paris region. And he brings beautiful produce. I'm not sure how many acres his farm is, but he has a huge harvest. And he is really sweet. He brings sweet potatoes for the African population. He was one of the first farmers to start growing kale, and he brings that for the Americans. And then he just has like lovely everything, fennel and rhubarb and spinach and all kinds of lovely lettuces and things like that. And flowers, you can buy fresh flowers at his place, and little, you know, potted flowers so you can put them in your balcony.
So we have to say that French people are not excited about kale. We find it in a few places. I can find it in a few places, but when I've served it to my French relatives, they just go, well, that's cabbage. What?
Yeah.
It's like a cabbage with wrinkly. It's a wrinkly cabbage. What? Yeah. What is the big deal? You know.
That's something I love about the French is that they're not going to like jump on board a trend about one vegetable. You know. I mean, I think
if there's a trend, we're like bad.
Yeah.
We don't like that.
Which I don't think that people should be living off kale alone. And I think broccoli to me is as exciting as kale. Usually I present kale as kale chips. It's super simple and everyone loves them. So that's kind of how I'll like introduce that.
I tried to make those once. I tried to make kale chip once. It was awful. It was a complete fail.
They go from not cooked to overcooked or overbaked in a half a second. It's really hard to keep that color and everything. So, but yeah, I mean, you just have to keep watching them, and I think take them out before they look like they're done. But
Anyway, so that's the Marché Ornano. So for people, it sounds like for people who are interested in craft beers, that might be a good area to visit.
The 18th, I mean, I'm a little bit biased because I love that neighborhood, but it's true that actually the 18th is kind of becoming like a little craft beer capital of the city. There's a beer shop that's called À la bière comme à la bière that has a really nice selection of craft beer. There's a little place that just opened up in that same area called El Tast. That's been open just under a year, or just about a year now, and it's actually Spanish. I think it's two Spanish guys who live in the 18th, and they wanted to combine their culture with the French culture. So they have like Spanish charcuterie and things like that, and tapas.
Oh, very nice.
With only French, maybe even only Ile-de-France beer. So locally brewed beer with, imported from their homeland meat and cheeses and things. So that's
how are the craft beers in France? I've never had a craft beer in France. I don't know.
Ooh, I have to send you one. I'm actually making my beer now, so if that works out, I'll let you know. It's great. I think it's really interesting because there's a lot of U.S. influence, and so the beers traditionally in France were more kind of malty and more based on the cereals, and now this U.S. and maybe British as well influence are kind of bringing in more hops, and people are kind of embracing this bitterness of like an IPA.
I'm going to interject and say, how is American influence in France ever considered a good thing?
Yeah.
Why do you call that good?
Class, I think.
Yeah, but it's beer anyway. Who cares? They can do whatever they want to the beer. We don't care.
No, I mean, it's definitely, and it definitely has a French touch. And the irony is that sort of IPA influence that happens in France, in the U.S. right now, the craft beer scene seems to be really influenced by these kind of bières de saison and this super French, like northern France style of brewing. So it's funny how, in France we're seeing, and there's a lot of different varieties, but I think the beginning of the movement was like, let's make something bitter, let's make something hoppy, let's shock people awake into tasting beer differently. And I think in the US, it's always been, American culture is very, kind of in your face. So I think it's like, let's make hoppy beer because we want to sort of, kind of same thing, shock people. But now I feel like they're taming themselves a bit and exploring kind of this French style of beer. While in France, it's kind of, there's this explosion of let's try all kinds of different things.
Very interesting.
It's fun. It's a super young movement. In May, it's going to be Paris Beer Week. It'll be the third Paris Beer Week. It's such a fun event, and it's a small community that's growing, but it really feels like a community, and it's a really welcoming place to ask questions, learn things, meet the brewers, taste the beers. It's a really, it just makes me so happy to see those people getting together. And
that's an interesting development, because so far I know plenty of Americans who brew their own beers, but I don't know any French person who brews their own beer.
Really? Are there not?
No,
are there
not yet. It'll come. I'm sure it'll come.
I think so. Yeah.
All of these trends, they come eventually, because French people, they like to resist trends like that. Mm-hmm. But in the end, we always try them anyway.
But I don't blame you though. I was in Brittany recently, and we were in this teeny town called Douarnenez. And, and it was just, it felt so in its time, it felt so unchanged by time. And, you wake up and go to the market and then go to the cafe and get a crepe. And there was just, it was so totally
real,
protected from any other outside influence. It felt like a little world, a little bubble. But I was just like, why would you ever change if you have all of this? Like, why would you? What else do you need,
Probably Brittany is going to be more open to this kind of movement because they've been making their own ciders for a long, long time.
True.
Individuals make their own ciders all the time. So going from a cider culture to a beer culture, I can see that.
Because, I think they'll drink anything up there too. They seem to be just ready to party, basically. So
that's also a possibility, yes. Very good, very good. Okay, Marché Bastille.
Yeah. Okay.
This is the last market we're going to talk about, and then we'll move on to recipes.
Okay, so I just, wanted to talk a little bit about that just because it's kind of in an area where there's a lot of tourists, so it would be an easy thing to kind of pop over and see.
Yes.
If you're staying in that area. So Bastilla's kind of, it's in the 11th, it's near the 4th, like the Marais. So I think that's that's a place where people often stay when they come.
Yeah.
Easy to get to. Yeah. Another huge market. There are some farmers there. It's also a great market to go. Like you said, if you don't have, if you're not renting an apartment and you're in a hotel or you maybe don't have a kitchen, you can go to the market and not buy things to cook. You can buy things to eat. That market actually has a stand that's run by people from Brittany, and you can buy like crêpe aux saucisses, or like a cheese crêpe or a sweet crêpe, or get like a little snack there. There's a few different places where you can grab food.
And in the spring and summer, the produce at the markets is to die for. I mean, the fruit, just to go buy peaches, go buy strawberries, go buy things that you can eat even if you don't have a kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a great time. We're getting into spring, and soon the strawberries will show up, and that's like anyone who can't get excited about a strawberry, I don't know what to say to them. Yeah. That's
They're not human.
Yeah, I mean, the first strawberry, when those show up, is just, and that's when you kind of get these reds coming into the market and all these different colors. So it's definitely,
and the melons. We have such good melon in France.
Oh, we don't have,
really
flavorful. In the South, I bet you do, yeah.
Le melon de Cavillon. That's a Provence melon, and you can buy it all over France. Okay. It's just a more expensive melon because it's one that spoils quickly. And so it has to be brought to market right on time, sold within a day or two, and then eaten quickly. So, but it's so flavorful. It's really good.
It's always those fleeting things that taste the best. The things that have a little window of in season, and you just have to eat them while you can.
Yeah. It's like fraises des bois.
Exactly.
I mean, if you happen to run into a patch on a walk, that's wonderful. But if you buy them at the store, they're gonna, they're picked that day and eaten that day, or they look after that they're no good.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah. So yeah, if you're not cooking for yourself in Paris, you can still really enjoy, or just go get some cheese and some nice crusty bread.
Have a picnic after. Yeah, totally.
There's just because you don't have time to go make a whole recipe, or maybe you have a tiny kitchen, which if you're renting an apartment in Paris, you probably will have a tiny kitchen.
Totally. If you're living in Paris, you'll have a tiny kitchen.
Exactly. So you might not feel like, this is a very funny thing about French people, is that overall we have much smaller houses and much smaller kitchens, yet we make very elaborate meals.
Totally. Yeah.
I get used to it.
Yeah, all of the recipes from the book I tested in my home kitchen, and I had a teeny Parisian kitchen, and we managed to make meals and have dinner parties, and don't let size stop you.
Yeah. But to a lot of Americans, they're like, well, I couldn't possibly do anything in here. I might be able to brew some coffee in the morning, but that's it.
Yeah.
It's not true. It's just what you're used to.
Exactly.
It's just you're so used to this grandiose kitchen.
Huge refrigerators and everything. Yeah, it's just a question of adapting yourself.
Yeah. We have tiny fridges that contain truffle in this country.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot of room to have truffles.
There you go. I like that fridge. I can get on board with that fridge.
Anyway, so let's talk about some of the recipes that you share in the book, and they all look delicious. I love the photography too. It's very nice.
Thank you.
The first one I wanted to talk about is the croque monsieur.
Okay.
Because that is such a classic French thing. Mm-hmm. So tell us your recipe.
So I wanted all of the recipes to be classic French and also use not a lot of ingredients and be super simple. I think there's some things that maybe might be a little bit more advanced. Like, for example, with this, with the croque monsieur recipe, there's the option of using a bechamel sauce with it. And I think, it's surprising to me. A lot of Americans, I think, you ask most French people, they'll know how to make a bechamel sauce. That's something that really intimidated me at first as an American.
Really?
Yeah, it did. I wasn't used to making a roux. I wasn't used to emulsions. Those were challenges. The hollandaise sauce, the first time I made it was because I really wanted it to be in the book. Even in the US, I feel like we don't make a lot of vinaigrettes ourselves. We buy salad dressing, and I think that's really sad.
Yes, so I have a beef about your vinaigrette, but we'll get to that afterwards.
Oh, okay. And so, yeah, so that's the idea of the croque monsieur. And I also think that's a really simple lunch option, and it's fun, and it's also one of those things where you just like put a salad next to it and it's a meal. So I thought if someone who doesn't feel, really confident in the kitchen, they could, it's basically a grilled cheese sandwich, but with a fancy name. So I think that's a nice option.
There's a little bit more to it, but yeah, it is.
And the croque monsieur I also wanted to include because I wanted to highlight the jambon de Paris and the fact that there's still one person making the traditional jambon de Paris in that style. Which is not adding any preservatives, which is working with, a ethically raised animal. And you can buy that at the boucherie, at the butcher shop that's on Rue de Nil. And so I wanted to also incorporate and highlight that ingredient because it's something that's, really like a local specialty. It's one of the few things that Paris, is kind of known for as far as, something that's made in the city. So
Yeah. So in my family, we go from meat eaters to vegetarian for a while and then back to meat eaters. And, we're kind of confused. But when we're not eating meat, what I do is I just make the croque monsieur without the ham.
Sure.
And it's really good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about the good ingredients and putting some love into it too.
Yeah. So what I do is I have one of these sandwich makers, that you see at cafes and stuff.
Uh-huh.
So your recipe says to do it in the oven, which works really well. I do it in the sandwich maker, but I just some good French butter, outside of the bread, inside a little bit of béchamel, some ham if you eat that, maybe a little bit of cheese, more bread. And then the classic look of the croque monsieur in a cafe is going to be where they put béchamel on top and some melted cheese on top. I don't do that with my sandwich maker because it would look awful.
Yeah, I guess that would work. That's where the oven comes in, I guess.
In the oven it would look really, really good.
It's nice and golden on top.
Yeah, experience with that. It's really, really fun. And your recipe is, it's step by step. It's really well put together. So
thank you. I want it to be really accessible. Again, like I don't have training as a chef. I wanted to write a guidebook, and then the idea came to include recipes that are inspired by the farmers. I didn't invent anything new. I just really wanted to bring it back to sort of the basics and feel like if I can make this, you can too, kind of.
Yeah. And then another recipe that I liked was your cheese fondue.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a great meal to have when you have company.
Yes, totally. We did that the other day, actually. I have a lot of winemakers that are neighbors. So I have some of my friends who make a wine that I thought would just go perfectly with the fondue. So I invited them over for fondue and they brought their wine, and it is so simple. And it just makes people happy to warm cheese, but you can't go wrong.
So why did you think that wine would go especially well with fondue?
I thought it's a really nice, like we have a beautiful minerality here, but in the terroir, in the Loire Valley, in the Loire-et-Cher where I am, but their wine has a little bit of it has a little bit of oxidation, like it kind of feels like it's been in contact with the with oxygen a little bit. It has this beautiful golden color, and it kind of has this nice sort of dry finish that complements the sort of creaminess of the cheese. And it has this richness that kind of goes with the fondue to make a really nice sort of decadent experience. And it's just a really expressive white wine that isn't shy against these really, kind of strong cheese flavors.
Right. And one thing I want to mention is I made fondue in the US. And in the US, it's really hard to find those cheeses. If you order them online, you can get them. Costco has some. Of those cheeses some of the time, some of the Costco's, but not all of them. Yeah. So really make your fondue with whatever cheese you have. and it works. It's amazing. It works the same.
Yeah.
You know, you could use a cheddar and a mozzarella and some sort of Swiss cheese or something.
As long as it melts together, yeah.
Exactly. If it's melt together and you get the right temperature and a good bread, it's going to work.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point too, because it's not worth using ingredients that you're not excited about. So yeah,
or that you can't find. It's to me, it's better to try and make it with something else than just to give up because I don't have those cheeses.
No, totally,
don't let that stop you.
Don't be shy to adapt for sure.
You know, just do it with whatever you've got because it works. It's a very adaptable concept. You know, you do have to have the pot that will keep it at the right temperature.
Some equipment is necessary, but other than that, it's pretty straightforward.
But it's fantastic because it's going to be a fun meal that will last a long time where people can chat. And it's very conducive to a good time.
And it takes the pressure off the host as well. You have to put in the initial time of, getting the cheese to incorporate and everything, but then you put it on the table, everyone can have at it and it's pretty simple and no fuss after that.
Right. And it's a sit down meal. I mean, you don't do that as a buffet style standing around, Don't try that. That's not going to work. You need to be sitting down.
Unless you want cheese all over your floor.
Sit down. But it's a sit down dinner that does not require that much effort,
For sure.
Make a nice salad, usually with fondue. Dessert, my favorite thing to go with it is a fruit salad.
Oh, that's a great idea.
It's light, and it's fresh and it goes well with, because, I mean, you're not going to have a cheese fondue with a cheesecake at the, but it's too much.
Yeah, or like a chocolate mousse or something.
Yeah, it's too much. So you want to keep it, keep the rest of the meal as light as you can. And it's a very, very, very French thing.
Yeah. No, I think it's, maybe in the US it was kind of maybe a la mode in the 70s or something, but I think it's something that should come back. It's a great winter recipe.
Then the other two recipes that caught my attention was the Swiss chard gratin.
That's so cool. That's my favorite recipe in the book.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
I love it.
Tell us about it.
I just love it to death. It's so easy. It's nice and creamy. We've got the bechamel going again. So, it has that richness. So easy. And then if you just bake it right, it just has this golden color. And I love it. It just feels like a ray of sunshine on a rainy day. And it's, I don't know. I feel like it's just one of those wholesome things that's, again, so simple. It's Swiss chard, the sauce, some cheese.
And then you melt it.
And then you're done. Yeah. And I think it always gets like oohs and ahs when you bring it to the table. I feel like people always kind of take a pause to savor it. I think Swiss chard is something that's a little bit underappreciated. It can be when it's fresh and ripe and ready to eat. It's so fulfilling. It just feels nourishing.
And in the US, you find colorful Swiss chard. In France, most of the time, we just get the white and yellow, the classic. So there's a couple of varieties that you can buy at regular stores, but for the most part, we have two varieties, and it's going to be one or the other. But in the US, it's very colorful.
It's the rainbow chard. It's
It's lovely. It's really easy to cook. It's just such a great vegetable.
Yeah, even just steamed or sautéed with garlic, or it doesn't need much to bring out its taste. And
if it's just steamed, it's really plain and boring.
I think you need to maybe you need to dress it up a little bit, maybe some like lemon juice and things like that. But
that's a food for old people. If you're eating boiled Swiss chard, you're old.
It's digestible.
But I like to add it to a basic quiche recipe.
Oh yeah, there's an idea.
You just add some Swiss chard to the quiche, and it's so good.
It's delicious.
And the last one I want to bring up is œuf en cocotte.
Oh, okay.
Because that is so easy to do, and I've never seen anybody do it in the US, and it's too bad because it's easy and delicious.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think getting it down to not over baking the egg yolk is the only like little trick to that,
Yeah.
but I'm just keeping an eye on it. And I think it's really nice too if you do it in little ramekins. You can it's individually served like that, super easy. It makes for a great like egg option for a brunch. And again, that with like a fruit salad would just be a delicious way to wake up with some nice toast. Or you can do soldiers as the English do and stick them in the egg yolk. Yeah, that one's easy. I think that was kind of inspired by the community garden that I was a member of at the in the 18th called Les Jardins du Ruisseau, and they had hens. And so some of the pictures in the book for that recipe are of the hens that are at the community garden. And it was just, using fresh eggs or, eggs from the market and making something that's really simple. And again, it's a little bit of cream, some salt and pepper, and you're good to go.
Yeah. And if you want to make it fancy in the Southwest, we add bits of foie gras.
Ooh, that is fancy.
Yeah, it's really good. Or truffle, or any fragrant mushroom is going to be delicious with that. So you just have to experiment. But what I do is I take a little ramekin, I put a little bit of butter in there. Again, I always use good quality salt butter, and then an egg or two, depending on how much you want. I don't beat the eggs. Some recipes call for beating the eggs.
Oh yeah.
A little bit of cream. If I'm gonna add mushrooms or whatever, that goes on the bottom of the ramekin, and then a little bit of cheese on top.
Nice, yeah.
In the oven, but not too much cheese, because if you put too much cheese, you won't see when the egg is cooked.
Yeah, and you really want to see also that bright color, and totally.
Yeah. So that is so easy to make. It takes
and that could even be like as a starter for a dinner or anything. I think everyone likes a little egg. It brings some protein into your meal. It's simple and
So I really recommend your book, because the recipes are, they're things French people make.
Yeah.
All the time.
The time.
Now I do mention the beef I have with your vinaigrette.
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
You start with the vinegar, and no, you don't do that.
That's always how I start, though.
Yeah, well, I start with
you start with the oil.
Well, the mustard. If I make homemade vinaigrette, it's always mustard. I always start with a big teaspoon of mustard, and then I with a whisk I add the oil slowly. Just slowly, really, really slowly, and then at the end I will add the salt and pepper and a little bit of vinegar, because you don't want too much vinegar.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. I accept your beef. But I mean, I think the most important thing is to start with the acidic element and then incorporate the oil into the acidic. So if you've got the mustard, that's doing that. And I'm going to try that.
And it makes a emulsified. It makes it's a stiff dressing. It's something that it goes really well with like a butter lettuce or something like that.
Or maybe on leeks.
Oh yeah.
That would be really good.
Yeah.
So
there we are.
Okay,
food.
I'm going to try that.
So plenty here to make you hungry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, and there's also desserts in there. There's a sauce for every season. There's different desserts, kind of traditional. There's a galette des rois if you want to make that in December for the traditional, galette des rois. And there's a stout cake that I use locally brewed stout in. Tried to incorporate local ingredients, but again, like you said, you can adapt. You can use your favorite stout that's made near you, or you can have fun with the recipes too. But the idea was also to use ingredients that are pretty easy to find almost anywhere in the world and make it accessible.
It's really this is the French way, is you use what you have. My parents' generation, they never bought hardly anything. They would use, they were not into kitchen gadgets. One, because you don't have room in your kitchen to put all these gadgets. And two, you don't need the kitchen gadgets. What you need is some technique and a good knife.
Yep.
If you have that, you can make, and time. What all these kitchen gadgets do is they let you do things faster and without much training, which is good. But then you have to have a huge kitchen where you can store all these things. But the old French way is really to use what you have.
Yeah, and I think it's all about, I think the minute that you start boiling a pot of water, you're cooking, and a pot and water can be all you need to make food, I mean, and a good knife and very simple things. And I think that's something I really love about places that have a strong food culture like France is, the recipes and the culture and traditions are based on what you can find here, and you really don't have to make it more difficult than that.
No, and it's always good to know what you want at the end. Mm-hmm. This is a problem with people who don't cook very much, is that they don't really know what it's supposed to look like or taste like. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you've been immersed in a food culture your whole life, like most French people are, well, you know what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah, and I think you can, eat something like a Swiss chard gratin and have a memory of Sunday lunch with your grandma or something. There's these like recipes that feel very like heartwarming and sentimental in some ways. But I would suggest to anyone who isn't familiar with a recipe to try to make it their own and not think about how it should taste at the end, but how they like. Yeah, and really never, ever, ever hesitate to like stick a spoon in whatever you're making, even if it's just, I don't know, even if it's just water that you're boiling, make sure the saltiness pleases you,
right.
Taste all along the way, and don't just expect for when it to be done. It'll, expect that to be a surprise. You want to participate in the cooking process. And the most important thing is it tastes good to you.
Right. So. And when you start watching a lot of cooking shows and stuff, you start feeling like you're cooking for a competition. Mm-hmm. Most of us are not.
No, we're cooking for our family or for ourselves, or
exactly. We're cooking
or to relax and,
to make ourselves happy.
Yeah, exactly.
So whatever makes you happy is good.
Yeah. Exactly.
Very good. Well, I really recommend your book. Tell us the name again.
So it's My Paris Market Cookbook, a culinary tour of French flavors and seasonal recipes. Right. And you can find it on all the kind of major places where you would order books. Also a few independent bookstores and spots in Paris. And if you want any more information, you can just visit parypaysanne.com. And that's where I kind of, have information about the book. I have links to the podcast that I do as well.
You do a podcast?
I do. I just started it not that long ago. It's been maybe 6 or 7 months. It's the Perry Paysanne podcast. So I do that. Right now I'm doing it just about once a month. But where I interview people from the Paris food and beverage scene. And it's been a really great way to meet amazing people and hear about all the exciting projects that are being launched. So that's all on the site. You can find everything there.
Very nice. And I'll put links to your site, of course, and to you've rattled off a lot of names in French. I think a few people are going to be lost. Like, what? What was that? So I'll find them and link to those cafes and brasseries and all that you've mentioned along the way, because they sound very good.
Yeah, highly recommended.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Emily, for coming on the show. It's been lovely chatting with you, and who knows? I'm going to have to start listening to your podcast now.
Yeah.
Another podcast I have to listen to. Oh, no.
There's never enough. Thank you so much, Annie, for having me on your podcast. It's been really fun.
You are most welcome. All right. Good luck, and talk to you soon, I suppose.
Yeah. Thanks, Annie.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you enjoy the show, let us know. Many thanks to listeners who donate to the show or use our Amazon and hotel booking links on joinusinfrance.com or on the show notes on your phone. Most people who find the show do it through a recommendation from a friend. If you share the show with a friend, let me know so I can fuss over you and thank you properly. The other way people learn about the show is through mentions on TripAdvisor, travel sites, and blogs. Thank you for dropping our name here and there. It really helps, and I'll be happy to fuss over you also if you let me know. Thank you. Have a great time in France, and when you come back, consider sharing your experiences in France with the other listeners. I really enjoy doing trip reports with you. Au revoir!